Chapter 17 of Lord Jim by Joseph Conrad. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Read by Peter Dan. Chapter 17. He came in at last, but I believe it was mostly the rain that did it. It was falling just then with a devastating violence which quieted down gradually while we talked. His manner was very sober and set. His bearing was that of a naturally taciturn man possessed by an idea. My talk was of the material aspect of his position. It had the sole aim of saving him from the degradation, ruin, and despair that out there closed so swiftly upon a friendless, homeless man. I pleaded with him to accept my help. I argued reasonably, and every time I looked up at that absorbed, smooth face, so grave and youthful, I had a disturbing sense of being no help, but rather an obstacle to some mysterious, inexplicable, impalpable striving of his wounded spirit. "I suppose you intend to eat and drink and to sleep under shelter in the usual way," I remember saying with irritation. "You say you won't touch the money that is due to you." He came as near as his sort can to making a gesture of horror. There were 3 weeks and 5 days' pay owing to him as mate of the Patna. "Well, that's too little to matter anyhow, but what will you do tomorrow? Where will you turn? You must live." "That isn't the thing," was the comment that escaped him under his breath. I ignored it, and went on combating what I assumed to be the scruples of an exaggerated delicacy. "On every conceivable ground," I concluded, "you must let me help you." "You can't," he said very simply and gently, and holding fast to some deep idea which I could detect shimmering like a pool of water in the dark, but which I despaired of ever approaching near enough to fathom, I surveyed his well-proportioned bulk. "At any rate," I said, "I'm able to help what I can see of you. I don't pretend to do more." He shook his head sceptically without looking at me. I got very warm. "But I can," I insisted. "I can do even more. I am doing more. I am trusting you." "The money," he began. "Upon my word, you deserve being told to go to the devil," I cried, forcing the note of indignation. He was startled, smiled, and I pressed my attack home. "It isn't a question of money at all. You are too superficial," I said, and at the same time I was thinking to myself, well, here goes, and perhaps he is after all. "Look at the letters I want you to take. I'm writing to a man of whom I've never asked a favour, and I am writing about you in terms that one only ventures to use when speaking of an intimate friend. I make myself unreservedly responsible for you. That's what I am doing, and really, if you will only reflect a little what that means—" He lifted his head. The rain had passed away. Only the water pipe went on shedding tears with an absurd drip-drip outside the window. It was very quiet in the room, whose shadows huddled together in corners, away from the still flame of the candle flaring upright in the shape of a dagger. His face, after a while, seemed suffused by a reflection of a soft light, as if the dawn had broken already. "Jove," he gasped out, "it is noble of you." Had he suddenly put out his tongue at me in derision, I could not have felt more humiliated. I thought to myself, serve me right for a sneaking humbug. His eyes shone straight into my face, but I perceived it was not a mocking brightness. All at once he sprang into jerky agitation, like one of those flat wooden figures that are worked by a string. His arms went up, then came down with a slap. He became another man altogether. "And I had never seen," he shouted, then suddenly bit his lip and frowned. "What a bally ass I've been," he said, very slow, in an awed tone. "You are a brick," he cried next in a muffled voice. He snatched my hand as though he had just then seen it for the first time, and dropped it at once. "Why, this is what he stammered, and then with a return of his old stolid, I may say mulish manner, he began heavily, "I would be a brute now if I—" And then his voice seemed to break. "That's all right," I said. I was almost alarmed by this display of feeling, through which pierced a strange elation. I had pulled the string accidentally, as it were. I did not fully understand the working of the toy. "I must go now," he said. "Jove, you have helped me. Can't sit still. The very thing." He looked at me with puzzled admiration. "The very thing." Of course it was the thing. It was 10 to 1 that I had saved him from starvation, of that peculiar sort that is almost invariably associated with drink. This was all. I had not a single illusion on that score, but looking at him, I allowed myself to wonder at the nature of the one he had, within the last 3 minutes, so evidently taken into his bosom. I had forced into his hand the means to carry on decently the serious business of life, to get food, drink, and shelter of the customary kind, while his wounded spirit, like a bird with a broken wing, might hop and flutter into some hole to die quietly of inanition there. This is what I had thrust upon him, a definitely small thing, and behold, by the manner of its reception, it loomed in the dim light of the candle like a big, indistinct, perhaps a dangerous shadow. "You don't mind me not saying anything appropriate," he burst out. "There isn't anything one could say. Last night already you had done me no end of good, listening to me, you know. I give you my word, I've thought more than once the top of my head would fly off." He darted, positively darted, here and there, rammed his hands into his pockets, jerked them out again, flung his cap on his head. I had no idea it was in him to be so airily brisk. I thought of a dry leaf imprisoned in an eddy of wind, while a mysterious apprehension, a load of indefinite doubt, weighed me down in my chair. He stood stock still, as if struck motionless by a discovery. "You've given me confidence," he declared soberly. "Oh, for God's sake, my dear fellow, don't," I entreated, as though he had hurt me. "All right, I'll shut up now, and henceforth. Can't prevent me thinking, though. Never mind, I'll show yet." He went to the door in a hurry, paused with his head down, and came back, stepping deliberately. "I always thought that if a fellow could begin with a clean slate, and now you, in a measure—" "Yes, clean slate." I waved my hand, and he marched out without looking back. The sound of his footfalls died out gradually behind the closed door, the unhesitating tread of a man walking in broad daylight. But as to me, left alone with a solitary candle, I remained strangely unenlightened. I was no longer young enough to behold at every turn the magnificence that besets our insignificant footsteps in good and in evil. I smiled to think that, after all, it was yet he of us two who had the light. And I felt sad. A clean slate, did he say? As if the initial word of each of our destiny were not graven in imperishable characters upon the face of a rock. End of chapter 17.